Commander Vex-Nori stared at the tactical display with what humans might call smug satisfaction. 14 standard cycles of preparation had led to this moment. Earth, that insignificant blue marble orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, would finally bow before the might of the Galactic Coalition. Status report. Lieutenant Zool, Vex-Nori commanded, his triple-jointed fingers drumming against the command console. That all fleets are in position, Commander. 2,700 warships surrounding the Sol system. Their primitive vessels won't even register our presence until it's far too late. Zool's mandibles clicked with anticipation. The humans are completely unaware of their impending doom. Oh, how wrong they were about to be. Vex-Nori had studied these creatures extensively, bipedal mammals who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Their ships were laughably outdated, their weapons systems crude, and their military strategies, well, calling them strategies would be generous. The Coalition had faced dozens of species far more advanced than these humans, and every single one had surrendered within hours of first contact. Initiate communication protocols, Vex-Nori ordered. Let's give them the standard surrender demand, make it sound appropriately threatening. The bridge fell silent as the transmission began. Through the view screen, Earth hung before them like a ripe fruit waiting to be plucked. Cities sparkled across the night side of the planet, completely oblivious to the armada that had just materialized at the edge of their solar system. Attention, primitive inhabitants of the third planet, Vex-Nori began, his voice carrying across subspace frequencies. This is Commander Vex-Nori of the Galactic Coalition Defense Force. Your world has been selected for integration into our glorious empire. You have exactly one planetary rotation to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. He paused for dramatic effect, just as the manual suggested. Prepare your leaders for transportation to our flagship. Any attempt at military resistance will result in the complete obliteration of your species. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, and the bridge crew exchanged what passed for grins among their various species. Lieutenant Zool's antennae twitched with amusement. I think they'll wet themselves, Commander? Probably already have. Vex-Nori replied with a chuckle. Remember the Kilaxians? They surrendered before we even finished the message, but something felt different this time. Usually there was immediate panic, frantic radio chatter, emergency broadcasts, military units scrambling like disturbed insects. Instead, Earth's communication networks remained surprisingly calm. Too calm. Hours passed. Then, finally, a response came through. The voice that emerged from the speakers was distinctly human, male, middle-aged, with an accent Vex-Nori's translators identified as North American English. But there was something in the tone that made his scales prickle with unease. Well. Commander Vex-Nori, is it? The human's voice carried an unmistakable note of amusement. This is General Marcus Webb, speaking on behalf of Earth's Unified Military Command. We received your little ultimatum, and I gotta say, we're flattered, really. 2,700 ships, for us? You shouldn't have. Vex-Nori's eyes narrowed. This wasn't the terrified pleading he'd expected. General Webb, I trust you understand the gravity of your situation. Surrender now, and your species may yet survive. A laugh echoed through the bridge speakers. An actual laugh. Oh, Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding. You see, we've been monitoring your approach for weeks. Your cloaking technology is about as subtle as a supernova. We've had plenty of time to prepare a proper welcome. Impossible. Zool hissed. Our stealth systems are military grade. These primitives couldn't possibly detect quantum displacement signatures in subspace. General Webb's voice cut through the lieutenant's protest. Yeah, we figured that out about 3 years ago. Handy little trick, really. Makes it real easy to track incoming fleets. Vex-Nori felt his confidence waver for the first time in cycles. Even if you detected our approach, your weapons are no match for Coalition shielding technology. You know, that's what the Vrex Hegemony said too. The silence that followed was deafening. The Vrex Hegemony had been the Coalition's primary rival for 3 centuries. Had been. Past tense. They'd vanished from known space 2 standard years ago, leaving behind only empty worlds and mystery. That's impossible. Vex-Nori whispered. The Vrex possessed technology far beyond your primitive capabilities. Possessed. Yeah, that's the right word. Webb's voice grew colder. Funny thing about the Vrex, they made the same mistake you're making right now. They underestimated us. Thought we were just another backwater species ready for conquest. Lieutenant Krazul's claws scraped against his console. Commander, this has to be some kind of bluff. Humans are barely capable of interplanetary travel. They couldn't possibly have defeated the Vrex. Tell me. Commander, Webb continued, ignoring the lieutenant's outburst. What do you know about human history? Our wars, our conflicts, our tendency to turn absolutely everything into a weapon. Vex-Nori's throat felt dry. He'd studied human military history, of course, but only briefly. Internal conflicts between primitive factions hardly seemed relevant to galactic conquest. We've been fighting each other for millennia, Webb explained, his voice taking on a lecturing tone. Wars that lasted decades. Weapons that could glass continents. We've perfected the art of killing in ways your coalition species have never even imagined. And then, 3 years ago, we finally had a common enemy. The tactical display began showing movement, small signatures appearing throughout the solar system. AZR, loss, ships decloaking. But these weren't the crude vessels Vex-Nori had expected. Sweet mother of stars, Krazul breathed. Those energy signatures, they're using Vrex technology. Adapted Vrex technology, Webb corrected. See, when you've spent your entire history trying to kill each other more efficiently, you get really good at reverse engineering weapons. The Vrex were kind enough to provide us with some excellent samples. More ships appeared. Hundreds. Then thousands. They emerged from asteroid fields, from behind moons, from what appeared to be empty space itself. Each one bristled with weaponry that made coalition armaments look like children's toys. This is impossible, Vex-Nori repeated. But his voice lacked conviction. You're a single world. We represent 17 star systems. Represented. Webb's voice carried that same cold amusement. Funny thing about those 17 systems, Commander. We've been visiting them for the past 2 years. Nice planets. Shame about the previous occupants. The blood in Vex-Nori's veins turned to ice. You're lying. Am I? Tell me, when was the last time you received a status report from the Kelax homeworld, or the mining colonies in the Turgon system? Krazul's mandibles clicked frantically as he worked his console. Commander, I'm not reading any signals from coalition territories. Long-range communications appear to be blocked, not blocked, Webb said cheerfully. Just no one left to send them. You see, we learned something important from our encounter with the Vrex. The best defense is a really, really good offense. Why wait for threats to come to you when you can eliminate them at the source? Vex-Nori's hands shook as he gripped the command console. The Coalition defense protocols clearly state that unprovoked aggression against member species is an act of war? Webb's laugh cut him off. Commander, you just threatened to obliterate our entire species. That ship sailed about 20 minutes ago. The human fleet had fully materialized now, sleek vessels that seemed to absorb light itself, bristling with weapons that defied known physics. They moved with a precision that spoke of advanced artificial intelligence, surrounding the Coalition armada with mathematical efficiency. Here's what's going to happen, Webb continued, his voice losing all pretense of humor. You're going to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be processed and relocated to suitable facilities. Your ships will be studied and reverse engineered. And your homeworlds, well, they'll receive the same courtesy you were planning to show us. This is madness, Vex-Nori gasped. You can't possibly manage an empire spanning 17 systems. Who said anything about managing an empire? Webb's voice carried genuine confusion. Commander, I think you misunderstood our intentions. We're not interested in ruling your territories. We're interested in making sure no one can threaten Earth ever again. The implications hit Vex-Nori like a plasma torpedo. You mean, complete sterilization of all potential threats? Yes, it's nothing personal, Commander. Just business, the business of survival. Alarms began blaring throughout the Coalition flagship as human vessels moved into attack positions. Energy readings spiked to levels that shouldn't have been possible from ships that size. Impossible power output. Zul reported, his voice barely a whisper. Those reactors, they're using matter-antimatter reactions on a scale I've never seen. Humans are very good at making things explode, Webb observed. We've had lots of practice. Vex-Nori's mind raced through possibilities. Retreat was impossible. Human ships had surrounded them completely. Fighting seemed suicidal given the technology gap. Surrender might buy time. But Webb had made it clear that survival wasn't on the table. Why? He finally asked. Why this level of overkill? Because, Commander, we learned something important from studying your coalition's history. You've conquered 43 species in the past 5 centuries. Every single one of them tried to negotiate, tried to find common ground, tried to appeal to your better nature. Webb paused, and when he continued, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Humans don't negotiate with bullies, we eliminate them. The first human weapons fired, and Vex-Nori watched in horror as coalition shields that had never failed in recorded history, simply ceased to exist. The energy beams passed through defensive barriers like they weren't even there. Temporal disruption fields, Webb explained helpfully as coalition ships began exploding around them. We discovered that most energy shields work by displacing incoming attacks through folded space-time. So we just attack the shields in the past, before they're activated. Simple, really. Yeah, this wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Wait! Vex-Nori screamed into his communicator. We surrender. Complete surrender. The firing stopped. Around them, the remnants of the once mighty coalition armada drifted in burning pieces. Of 2,700 warships, perhaps 50 remained intact. Sorry, Commander. Webb's voice carried what might have been genuine regret. But we tried that approach with the Vrex, accepted their surrender, set up prisoner exchanges, even attempted peace negotiations. You know what they did? Meh. Vex-Nori remained silent. They came back. Bigger fleet, nastier weapons, and a really unpleasant plan involving planetary bombardment. Fool us once, shame on you. Fool us twice, please. Vex-Nori whispered. My crew, they're just following orders. Yeah, that's what the Vrex said too, right before they tried to crack our moon open like an egg. The human ships began moving again, weapons charging for another volley. But Webb's voice stopped them. However, Commander, we're not completely unreasonable. We'll give you the same choice we gave the Vrex leadership. God. Well, they're gay. But, hope flickered in Vex-Nori's chest. What choice? You can watch your homeworld die quickly, or you can watch it die slowly. Your call. The silence stretched across space like a funeral shroud. Vex-Nori stared at the tactical display where his once proud armada had been reduced to floating debris and terror-stricken survivors. 50 ships, 50 out of 2,700. Quickly or slowly? He repeated, his voice hollow. What kind of choice is that? General Webb's response came with the casual tone of someone discussing weather patterns. The practical kind, Commander. See, we've run this scenario 43 times before with your coalition's previous victims. Some species prefer the Band-Aid approach. Others like to savor the experience. Lieutenant Zul's antennae had gone completely rigid with fear. Commander, long-range sensors are detecting massive human fleet movements throughout our territory. They're not just surrounding our homeworld. They're everywhere. Of course they are, Webb replied, clearly monitoring coalition communications. Did you really think we'd wait for you to make the first move? While you were planning your grand invasion, we were systematically dismantling your entire civilization. Vex-Nori felt his legs give out. He collapsed into his command chair, the weight of realization crushing down on him. How long? How long have you been at war with us? War? Webb's laugh was sharp. Commander, this wasn't a war. Wars require two sides capable of fighting. This was pest control. Through the view screen, more human vessels continued materializing. These weren't the sleek warships from before. These were massive construction platforms, mobile factories, ships designed for something far more permanent than battle. Those are colony ships, Zul whispered. They're preparing to settle our worlds. Some of them, Webb confirmed. The habitable ones, anyway. Turns out 17 star systems contain a lot of real estate, perfect for Earth's expanding population. But the coalition territories are inhabited by billions of. Were inhabited, Webb corrected. Past tense, Commander. We're very thorough. The horror of it struck Vex-Nori like a physical blow. An entire interstellar civilization, wiped out while he'd been preparing for what he thought would be a simple conquest. You committed genocide on a galactic scale. We committed survival. Webb's voice hardened. Your coalition has spent 5 centuries enslaving and exterminating species across this sector. The Alluri, the Benthos, the Crystalline Collective. Remember them? No? That's because you turned them into footnotes in your history books. Images began appearing on Vex-Nori's tactical display. Worlds he recognized. Coalition member planets, but they weren't as he remembered them. Massive human installations dotted their surfaces, terraforming equipment, or mining operations. Cities under construction. The Keelak's homeworld, Webb narrated as the images cycled. Beautiful ocean planet. Shame about the previous tenants. But the dolphins seem to love their new home. Oh, and the Turgon mining colonies? We've tripled their output. Turns out automated systems work much better when they're not being operated by slaves. This is insane. Vex-Nori gasped. The galactic community will never stand for this level of aggression. What galactic community? Webb asked with genuine curiosity. Commander, let me paint you a picture of the current political situation. The Vrex hegemony? Gone. Your coalition? About to be gone. The Kelton Federation? They sent us a very nice fruit basket and a non-aggression pact. Smart folks, the Keltons. More ships appeared on sensors. Not human vessels this time, but designs Vex-Nori didn't recognize. Sleek, organic-looking craft that moved with fluid grace. Ah, perfect timing, Webb said cheerfully. Commander, I'd like you to meet our new allies. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium and the Helix Collective. Turns out, once you remove the biggest bullies from the playground, everyone else becomes very interested in friendship. The alien vessels took up positions alongside the human fleet. Their weapons weren't targeting the coalition survivors, but their presence sent a clear message. Humanity wasn't alone anymore. Impossible. Zul muttered. The Zephyrians are pacifists. They've never allied with anyone militarily. They still are pacifists, Webb replied. But they're also pragmatists. Turns out, supporting the side that can guarantee their safety is a pretty easy choice. A new voice joined the communication channel, melodic, with the harmonic undertones characteristic of Zephyrian vocal cords. Commander Vex-Nori, this is trade singer Leth Anos of the Consortium. We have reviewed the Coalition's historical records regarding your treatment of peaceful species. We find your methods unacceptable. The Helix Collective concurs, added another voice, this one buzzing with the electronic harmonics of a machine intelligence. The Coalition's expansion protocols violate 17 interstellar conventions regarding species preservation. Your termination has been authorized. Vex-Nori's world collapsed around him. Not only had humanity destroyed his civilization, they'd somehow convinced half the galaxy that it was justified. You turned them against us, he accused. We didn't have to, Webb replied. Turns out, when you spend centuries terrorizing your neighbors, they remember. We just gave them the opportunity to do something about it. The human fleet began moving again, but not toward the coalition survivors. They were heading toward Earth, carrying their cargo of prisoners and salvage technology. The message was clear. The demonstration was over, so what now? Vex-Nori asked quietly, do you execute us here, or drag us back to your world for some kind of trial? Neither, Webb said. And for the first time, his voice carried something that might have been pity. Commander, we're not monsters. Efficient, yes. Thorough, absolutely. But not monsters. A single human vessel broke formation and approached the coalition flagship. It was smaller than the warships, clearly designed for transport rather than combat. That ship will take you and your survivors to a neutral world in the Kelton Federation. You'll be given basic supplies, shelter, and the opportunity to start over. Build a life that doesn't involve conquering your neighbors. Vex-Nori stared at the approaching vessel. You're letting us live? We're giving you a chance, Webb corrected. What you do with that chance is up to you. But Commander, let me be very clear about something. This is the only mercy you'll receive. If any coalition survivors attempt to rebuild their military, if they try to form alliances for revenge, if they so much as look crossways at a peaceful species, we'll finish what we started today. The transport ship docked with the flagship. Human soldiers in power armor began boarding, but they weren't there to fight. They were providing medical aid to wounded coalition crew members, distributing emergency supplies, organizing the evacuation. I don't understand. Krazul whispered. Why show mercy now? After everything, it was trade singer Lethanos who answered. Because, Lieutenant, true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to know when destruction is unnecessary. Humanity has proven both their power and their restraint. Webb's voice returned to the channel. The coalition fell because it relied on fear and oppression. We're building something different, Commander. A galaxy where species cooperate instead of conquer. Where trade replaces raids. Where exploration doesn't mean exploitation. As the evacuation continued, Vex-Nori found himself face to face with a human soldier. The being was smaller than he'd expected, with soft features and kind eyes, nothing like the terrifying conquerors he'd imagined. Commander, the human said, offering a medical kit. I'm Sergeant Lisa Park. I'll be coordinating your transport to the Kelton worlds. You speak our language perfectly, Vex-Nori observed. Park smiled. We've been studying coalition cultures for 3 years. We wanted to understand who we were dealing with. Your people have a rich history, Commander. The Commander, art, music, philosophy. It's a shame your government chose the path of conquest instead of creation. 3 years, Vex-Nori repeated. You've been planning this for 3 years, planning for peace, Park corrected. The military action was just one part of a much larger strategy. We've established trade agreements with 47 species, scientific exchanges with 32, and cultural programs with 19. Turns out most civilizations prefer cooperation to conquest. As they walked toward the transport ship, Vex-Nori saw more evidence of human preparation. The evacuation was running with military precision, but it was also surprisingly gentle. Wounded coalition soldiers were receiving the same medical care as humans. Personal belongings were being carefully preserved and transported. This was all planned, he realized. The mercy, the transport arrangements, even the new government structures for our former territories. Of course, Park replied. Did you think we'd just wing it? Humans are very good at planning, Commander. We've had practice. The transport ship was comfortable, designed for long-term habitation rather than quick transport. There were entertainment facilities, educational programs, even communication systems that would allow the coalition survivors to contact family members who might have escaped to neutral worlds. As the ship prepared to depart, Webb's voice came through the speakers one final time. Commander Vex-Nori, you asked earlier why we chose such overwhelming force, why we didn't try negotiation or diplomacy first. Vex-Nori listened silently. The answer is simple. We looked at your history, 5 centuries of conquest. 43 species enslaved or exterminated, billions of lives lost to coalition expansion, and we realized that some threats can't be reasoned with. They can only be eliminated. The transport ship began moving, carrying its cargo of defeated warriors toward an uncertain future. But here's what your coalition never understood, Webb continued. True victory isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about making sure you never have to fight them again. Today we accomplished both goals. As they left the Sol system behind, Vex-Nori looked back at Earth through a porthole. The blue world hung peacefully in space, giving no sign of the terrible power it had just unleashed. Around it, the human fleet was already dispersing, heading back to their new territories to continue the work of building their expanded civilization. What will you do now? Sergeant Park asked, settling into a nearby seat. Vex-Nori considered the question. His military career was over. His civilization was gone. His entire worldview had been shattered in the span of a few hours. "I don't know," he admitted. "Learn, perhaps. Try to understand how we got everything so wrong." Park nodded. "That's a good start, Commander. The Keltons have excellent educational facilities, and who knows? Maybe someday you'll be part of building something better than what came before." As the transport ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying its passengers toward an uncertain but hopeful future, a final transmission echoed across the galaxy. Not a threat this time, but a promise. "This is General Marcus Webb, speaking for the United Earth Federation and our allies. The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation has begun. To all species receiving this message, we offer trade, friendship, and mutual protection. To any who would threaten that peace, remember what happened to the coalition. Remember that some fates are sealed not by weakness, but by the arrogance of underestimating those you seek to destroy." The transmission ended, and the galaxy settled into a new equilibrium. One where humanity stood as both protector and partner, having proven that sometimes the greatest mercy is the complete destruction of merciless systems. And somewhere on Earth, in a small office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, General Webb turned off his communication console and returned to reading his daughter's school report on interstellar diplomacy. The galaxy was safe, his family was secure, and tomorrow there would be new worlds to explore and new friends to make. After all, humans were very good at making friends. They were just better at eliminating enemies.